Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Momo versus MTG. Today, we'll be taking a look at someone who reached out to me about the Commander format. We started getting talking. He's like, "Hey, any new tips, recommendations for the Commander format?" Which I gave him some advice on. But yeah, he's transitioning over from Yu-Gi-Oh, but he just got into the Commander format. So pretty cool to see that the format is growing, and he's got a couple of decks that he's been brewing, playing with friends, learning the game, all these kinds of stuff. And the first one of the first commanders he decided to build around is Tessa Karlov. And this is the baseline of the deck he has here. He has 86 cards here. Without further ado, let's jump into the deck. I don't want to talk about its strong suits, what what the direction he's chosen to go with, and so forth. And then a few recommendations from me, um, and then we'll jump right into that. So first off, of course, we have Tessa Karlov, very popular commander in the format for 2 mana and Orzhov. Get a human advisor. If a creature dying causes a trigger ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. Also gives your creature tokens vigilance and lifelink. So, very powerful effect here. We call this the Death Harmonicon. Instead of the enter the battlefield effect, she doubles the death triggers. So, of course, he's put it in a lot of ways. Um, the viewer, but in a lot of ways to take advantage of this, doubling up on strong effects, and went down, of course, the aristocrat line of the deck, which deals with draining your opponents and gaining life. So let's just start off with the ramp package. Love to see it. So he has 11 sources of ramp here. He had nicely organized. Um, so your typical Soul Ring, Signets, Mind Stone, Talismans, all the cheap mana rocks, which seems pretty good in the deck. And then we have the ramp options that synergize with our commander that take a little bit to get off the ground. So Pawn of Ulamog, right? Whenever another itself or another creature you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, create a 0/1 color so Eldrazi spawn, has sacrifice add a mana. So can ramp you while your creature's dying. And of course, with our commander, we are doubling this ability. So very strong. Pitiless Plunderer, another extremely strong card. Whenever another creature controlled dies, create treasures. So we get a lot of colorless mana here, and we get a lot of treasured colored mana here. So both are very nice fits to the deck. Sifter Skulls, a little more expensive Paul Ulamog, but again creates these tokens that give us mana. Solemn's pretty sick. Always a nice fit in the deck because it gets us a land and gets us 2 cards later on with our commander. Black Market. So I like he has only a few of the top end ramp options. So Black Market, extremely strong. Takes a little bit to get there, but whenever a creature dies, which will be happening throughout the game and our deck especially, you add black for each charge counter, and charge counters get put on once creatures die. So you can have a ton of mana floating in your pre-combat main phase. And Revel Riches, another enchantment, very strong, and is win con on its own. Created whenever a creature an opponent controls die, create a colorless treasure artifact token. So again, this will ramp us pretty hard because creatures die a lot in the commander format, and a nice alternative win con here. If you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. Um, so pretty generic and good ramp package for Orzhov. This is going to be more than sufficient to do all the things you want to do in the deck because your commander costs 4. You're playing Signets, Soul Rings, all the cheap mana rocks early on. Hopefully get to your commander pretty fast. So that's good to see. Let's take a look at the aristocrat theme in particular. I like to dive into that. He's one category here called counters, Feast of the Vicious Dead. It's not bad though, always to have a backup plan if the aristocrat draining and gaining is not working. But if at least you're gaining life, beginning end step, if one or more creatures die this turn, you gain that much life. So life gain's always nice. Distribute that many +1/+1 counter among creatures you control. So a lot of value here. We have a lot of tokens that are going to be dying, a lot of creatures going to be dying, and again, uh, gaining life and growing our board is very powerful. And then down in the draining and gaining effects, so we have the Blood Artist, Cruel Celebrant. Elisa Corsatus Pilgrim, Zulaport, Master Remembrance, Falconwrath Noble, Mirkwood Bats, Vindicate Vampire, Sir Conrad the Grim. So we have 9 draining effects here, which is, I think, pretty sufficient. It's a little high, but I think, for this deck, it's perfectly fine here. I think nine's a nice number, because it's always good to have some redundancy of these effects, because these will be winning the game most of the time for us. So it's good to have extra copies. And they all have various effects when creatures die, or you sacrifice, in particular, mm, creatures you have. You're gonna be getting all these effects, and of course, Sir Conrad is a big one, because it's entering or leaves the graveyard. So a lot of value stabled on these cards. Gonna be winning us the game. Moving over to our draw package, I like the distribution. It's not all static, where like things like Dark Prophecy, Midnight Reaper, Smothering Abomination, and Harvester of Souls. So it's nice to have some static, that's going to be accruing value. Dark Prophecy is going to get double triggers. A lot of these are going to get double triggers, which is nice to see. But if we don't have a commander out and we don't have a lot of creatures, these are kind of dead cards in our hand. So having things like some Deadly Disputes, which also ramps us, Village Rites, Skull Clamp, and Corrupted Conviction, especially Skull Clamp, right? This is just probably one of the best cards in the deck. Because we'd be drawing 4 cards off our little tokens. But our one-shot effects are very good because it can dig to the pieces that we need. So nice balance here. 9 in the card draw seems really good. I recommend it, right? Going down here, this is the area that was lacking a little bit in my eyes, is the recursion package. So we have Reassembling Skeleton, great card. Victimize, good one shot, get 2 creatures back, very powerful. And Revelark, also Revelark, very nice. I like this effect here because you can either evoke it for its immediate value or double up later on when you sacrifice it yourself. So nice cards in here, but this section I would like to see a little bit bigger. Orzhov plays pretty nicely off recurring stuff, and especially there's a lot of lines to take a look at with recursion spells, and especially in terms of Teysa Karlov. I will state off that he reached out to me, and for his play group, it is a bit more a powerful play group. I don't exactly know where he's at, but it sounds like they're gearing towards either pre-EDH or somewhere around that area. I don't think they're going to be full-blown CDH, but they want to do powerful plays early on and games to be faster. That is the play group that he's a part of, and that's the direction they want to go. So having some lines that will, end the game on the spot with a couple card combo, something like that, is nice to have. And that's why I'm looking at the recursion section. That there, for Orzhov, there's a decent bit to explore, which I'll take a look at some. But there are lines out there to, maybe have some infinites in a deck that you can draw into, and end the game that way. So a nice way to, end the game on your terms and, in a timely fashion. Then we take a look at this removal package, and he groups the board wipes in with your just, standard removal on particular things, which is fine. He's got a nice distribution here. Has all the cheap removal spells, Path, Swords, Despark, especially in Orzhov colors. You're not lacking anything here. Mortify, and of course, Red Oblivion. I love this card because you can do it twice and as a sack outlet, which is definitely not bad for us. And some more expensive ones, but he's got plenty of ways to deal with a board. Because there could be some pesky threats, like a Dothi Voidwalker, Rest in Peace, these type of effects that really hose our deck. So having answers to them is very important, and he surely does have enough. And I like to point out he's got, I think, about 4 board wipes, which, I think anywhere between 3 to 5, if you want to put more, by all means, is like a healthy number of board wipes, because there's some games you're going to be sitting there and be like, I wish I could clear up the space so I can do my thing. So some board wipes are nice. Merciless Eviction gets rid of, everything. The big exile effect. So board wipes are really up to you. I'll give you my suggestions later on. But yeah, these are nice. These are very nice. And then Butcher of Malakir, right? This card's going to win games for us, 100%, if this resolves, because you control the board state of enemies' creatures, and yeah, very, very strong. Moving right along, taking a look at the sack outlets. We have four, and he went with all the free sack outlets, which is, very powerful. So let's go down this line. Carrion Fear, Viscera, Woe Strider, and Yahenni. So these are all great free sack outlets. Truth be told, I'd like to see a couple more, because our commander plays pretty heavily off the sacrifice theme, and especially a lot of our card draw, right? So we want a healthy balance between the two. I'd say like 6 or 7 would be my suggestion of like sack outlets. We'll go into the ones I've taken a look at that I think are pretty good fits. But yeah, great cards here. No complaints. Cool. Moving along. And then of course a token theme, because the bottom text here we have giving our tokens Vigilance Lifelink to keep us alive if we're not winning the game right away. So, we have a crawling chorus. Basically dies, we're going to be creating these tokens, whether they're mites, spirits, um, all that type of good stuff. And especially we'll be creating 2 of these with the Afterlife effect. With our drain effects, it's going to be very powerful, because one creature drains each opponent for 3 all of a sudden, right? Tide Taker, love this card just in general, but kind of hoses people who want to interact during your turn, makes them pay more, and in the Afterlife, right? So a lot of these are just nice cards with Afterlife, which is great, right? Creating, 2 1/1 spirits. Now we're creating 4, right? With our commander. Hollow Spirit Keeper is really sick, because we're going to be wanting to put a lot of cheap creatures into our graveyard, so this can get a ton of value. And yeah, and then he has Drivnod, Carnage Dominus, which is basically another copy of a commander, and we can usually get that indestructible clause. So really cool to see, doubles death effects. And then Open the Graves, another one, a little more expensive, but it gives us extra tokens on top of it all, and especially we're doubling that, so pretty powerful. And Reliquim Angel, right? We're gonna be sacking a lot of non-spirit creature, non whenever a non-spirit creature you control dies, create a 1/1 spirit, put it on the battlefield. So we're going to be doing a lot of that as well. And lastly, we have the tutor package, which I'll give some suggestions. But we have one here. Depends the direction you want to take the deck. If you want to spice it up a bit. So, and I skipped over to land base, but we have 22. Your fixing's pretty much up to you. Would be my suggestion. But seem to have a decent balance to everything. Just to note that these are tapped lands, which will be slowing the game down for you a little bit, but depends, what kind of speed you want to go for. But you have decent fixing here. Just need to add the swamps, right? With 10 more swamps, land base for this, I'd recommend anywhere between like 34 lands to upwards of like 36, because that's just my suggestion, personal preference. I feel like with that, it's a healthy number to at least ramp out to your commander, and you don't need to go too much higher than that early on. So that's my suggestion there. And lastly, the protection package. I would actually recommend some more protection, especially namely your commander. The rest of your field's not super important because you kind of want it to die. But yeah, Swiftfoot Boots, and then if there's other things we can throw in here to protect your commander, since it's such a high value target, generally in commander games, it is prime target for removal. So yeah, let's take a look at that. While I'm thinking, throw this card in here, right? Bam, cool. So, without further ado, let's take a look at some suggestions I have. So for the lands, add some more swamps, add a Bajuka Bog because it has 86 cards right now. So these 2 are pretty easy includes, right? Get your land base up to working terms. And let's just go down here. So my suggestion is maybe add a couple more tutors. Anywhere from Profane Tutor. If we're looking at budget, budget's pretty important, it seems like, and definitely is for sure, especially starting out. You can add those, more powerful cards later on. But Profane Tutor's a nice one, especially to drop early for 2 mana. Over the course of 2 turns, you're removing time counters, and then you get to search for anything. On that note, I will be taking a look down here, but these are definitely the more expensive options. Not necessarily better, but in conjunction with other cards could be. So I'll be giving both takes on it because I like both piles of these cards for what they want to do. For the more expensive versions, you can grab Vampiric Tutor or Demonic Tutor, but those are going to run you a decent price. One that isn't super expensive could add in is Diabolical Intent. Nice card here. Gives you a sack outlet in your creature and also go search for any card. So grabbing the answers you need, of course, in Commander is a very powerful effect. We all know that. So the tutor front is those would be my suggestions. And then going down the line of let's jump back to protection, right? So we have our commander, which is the most important card in our deck, I'd say. And we take a look at its subtyping. It's a human advisor. So let's throw in some things that synergize with humans, right? Love this card from Ikoria, General's Enforcer. Legendary humans you control have indestructible. So this is what we're looking for, right? Drop this turn early before we play our commander. Now we get to protect it as it comes in. So love to see it. And an added bonus later on, exile target card from a graveyard. So if someone else is doing graveyard shenanigans, gives you graveyard hate, which is another part of the deck I'd like to take a look at. Is you're an Orzhov color, so it's pretty easy to do, easy to fill in. But you can remove a problematic card, and if it was a creature card in particular, you create a 1/1 human creature token. So more things to sack later on, and immediate value on your commander. And then also, Jarina Dauntless General, again for Orzhov, has great graveyard hate. So already a very strong card. And then you can sacrifice it. Humans you control gain hexproof and indestructible. So now if someone's trying to Swords to Plowshare your commander, trying to exile it, you now have a way to protect it and a creature body. So highly recommend something like that. And then lastly, Lightning Greaves. A little more expensive than the Swiftfoot Boots, but we're not going to be wanting to target our commander. So we can give it Haste and Shroud for free. Free equip costs. So Shroud's a very powerful ability, so you can't target it, right? Like I said, but that means your opponents can't either with Shroud. So some extra protection on your commander, something I'd look out for, or ways to, at least I think, to reanimate it, a way to cheat commander tax, because when it dies, of course, you have to pay 2 more. So anything like that, I would recommend. Going down the list, can just throw out, let's take a look at the recursion package, right? So cards I'd like to take a look at in particular, Nether Trader here for 2 black mana. Haste Shroud, kind of cool, I guess, you can swing with it, but whenever another creature is put into your graveyard from the battlefield, you may pay black. If you do, return Nether Trader from your graveyard to the battlefield. We create a lot of tokens, and having something we can sack over and over again is very powerful. So we take a look at reassembling skeleton, like these effects definitely want to be in the deck for some of them, right? So reassembling skeleton, we can sack again and again if we have the mana for, which we'll go over. So yeah, something like a Nether Trader would be really nice. Another one shot, Back for Seconds, came out with Wilds Eldraine for 3. You can sacrifice an artifact or enchantment or token. As you cast a spell, we create a lot of tokens, so good fit here. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. If the spell is bargain, you may put one of those cards with mana value 4 or less on the battlefield instead of into your hand. So with this in your hand and your commander out, someone removes your commander. Back for Seconds is extremely strong here, because you get to put your commander straight back onto the battlefield, and another creature that maybe was removed back into your hand. So those type of effects I'm looking for would suggest putting into the deck. Um, and another really good card is Dread Return here. Return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield for 4, so a little expensive. But the flashback is a sack outlet for your spirits that you're be creating, and you get to do it again. So having two, being able to do this multiple times, extremely strong. Love to see it. And then these cards here, which I love. Junji, the Midnight Sky, Neon Dynasty Dragon. Multiple options, so we can either, with our commander alone, when this thing dies, make our opponents discard 2 cards and lose 2 life twice, or we could, put two target non-dragon creature cards from your graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. You lose 2 life. So it's either a double reanimation or basically get rid of our opponent's hands. So would suggest to include something like this. Karmic Guide is a nice creature. Enters the battlefield, return target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield, and it sacrifices itself, which is pretty good as well. We'll go into why, but this card is very powerful. In conjunction with some other cards in the deck, can lead to some loops, which we'll go into a little bit. I don't want to harp on it, but Sun Titan for 6 enters battlefield, return target permanent card, mana value 3 or less from graveyard to the battlefield. So yes, some sort of recursion, either for permanents, for creatures especially, because let's take a look here real quick. You can take a look, 34 creatures, right? And a lot of them are cheaper, so getting ways to recur them, getting extra values is something we're looking at. Yeah. And if we go down a little bit further here, a little more expensive. So these are more expensive cards. Aerithos, God of Passage, I really like, because whenever another creature you control dies, it gets put back into your hand unless an opponent pays 3 life. And you get to target that opponent, and you get 2 triggers of this. So, something like, a funny Haunted Witness dies. If you have Aerithos out, you can target the same opponent even twice and say, hey, basically pay 6 life, or this gets put back into my hand, you get to do it again. So you get into scenarios where you bully your opponent to the point where they can't pay this cost if they really want to stop you, and basically have infinite recursion on your creatures. So a really cool card to see. Cavalier Knight is another nice one. It's actually a little more on the cheaper side, but it's a sack outlet on your creature. You get to destroy creatures, so nice utility here. And when it dies, double this trigger, return creature card CMC 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. This can double. Double up on that is very nice. So, yeah. And the last thing, speaking of tutors, Sidisi is a creature that has exploits. So you sack outlet on a creature one time. And when you do, get to search your library for a card, put in your hand, and shuffle. So if you're looking for tutor options, those are ones I'm looking at. And also the recursion spells, those are the things I'm looking at. Yeah. I want to just touch on the board wipes real quick. So you have really great board wipes. Other things maybe I'd recommend is Dusk Dawn, because you have a lot of low power creatures. Depends on your play group. If they also have low power play groups or plays, walls that have 0 attack, right? This might not be a good fit, but the aftermath is return all creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand, so it gives you nice reanimation as the upside, and could be a potential one-sided board wipe. Eternal Wanderer is probably my favorite board wipe right now in the format, because you get to keep your most important creature, which is probably your commander, and then each player sacrifices all creatures not chosen this way. And then you also have some nice other effects where you create more tokens to sack, or Flicker, which is exile 1 target artifact or creature and return to the battlefield. So those would be my suggestions, but definitely what you're working with is really good. Yeah, and then I want to jump into the second theme of creating these tokens, right? In particular, Open the Graves, very good card. But I feel like there might be other alternatives that might fit your needs better. In particular, I like Dramatic Finale. It's a mana cheaper. Creature tokens you get +1/+1, so already buffs up to your board. But whenever one or more non-token creatures you control die, create a 2/1 white and black Inkling creature token flying. Triggers once each turn, but it's a way to buff up all your little spirits as well, so you can swing with them since they have flying, and then also you're getting more on top of it. And then with that in mind, Divine Visitation is another thing I look at. Either in conjunction or separate, because you're creating a lot of small spirit tokens, but Divine Visitation turns them into 4/4 angels with flying and vigilance. So this is another way to end the game as well if you were creating a ton of tokens, which we do in this deck. Yeah, and then I just want to go down just some general feels good creatures to add. Shambling Gas, strong consideration for me because we have a lot of sack outlets, and it's either removal because with our commander we put 2 -1/-1s on a creature, or create 2 treasures. So pretty powerful there. Market Gnome, I think this is a newer card, came out, yeah, pretty recent, which didn't even see. But it dies, you get to draw 2 cards with your commander, gain 2 life. Yeah, and the second part's not super important, but the first part's good enough on its own, right? Because we're not crafting in this deck. Blood-Soaked Champion for 1. As long as you swing with something, you can cast this, so it's basically another Assembling Skeleton, which is very powerful, we'll go into. In terms of token, Jadar, Ghoulcaller, is very powerful, because we have no zombies with Decayed. We get to create one, and this is repeatable every turn for us, and we can, of course, attack with those zombies, sacrifice them. Leon Relic Warder is something I want to talk about, because we have a creature in here, which is pretty funny. Arcana Justice, right? A little more expensive for 5. We do get to double the effect, so it is good. But for Leon Relic Order, enters battlefield, we can exile target artifact or enchantment for 2. But when it dies, it does come back to the battlefield, but there are some lines in here that abuse this even for our own stuff, so I'll take a look at that. And another recursion spell, Animate Dead, very, very strong. You get to pull something out of the graveyard, and the neat part about this is that this is an enchantment aura that goes onto that creature, so we can, with our recursion, abuse this mechanic a little bit in our deck. Going down the list here, we have Braids Risen Nightmare for 3 mana. Builds us a lot of value because we get to have a sack outlet each turn on our end step and draw cards. So consideration for the deck, not necessary. But for the repeatable sack outlets, I would take maybe a look at this. Maybe it has some merit to you. For 3 mana, it's an enchantment, sacrifice a creature, regenerate target creatures. So we can sacrifice something that's not important and regenerate, let's say, our commander, another high value target. If they try to remove it, this doesn't get around exile effects, but destroy effects, it does. So something to consider, and it's a free sack outlet, along with Martyr's Cause for 3. Sacrifice a creature, prevent all damage to a creature or player from one source. So a good way to protect yourself against commander damage, let's say, because you can sacrifice a creature and stop the one creature from dealing damage. So very, very nice to see. Ophiomancer, love this card for 3. Because at the beginning of each upkeep, so every turn cycle, you get to create a 1/1 black snake creature token with Death Touch if you don't control any. So at the beginning of someone's end step, you can sacrifice it, drain someone, and then you'll get it again. Something to keep in mind. And here's a really niche card, which, let's give a good read in this card. I really like this card. I think it'd be a neat fit, up to you, during removal for 4. So you play with your hand revealed. Not good. But if you would draw a card, reveal the top card of your library instead. If it's a creature card, put it right in your graveyard. Otherwise, draw a card. Whenever a creature is put into graveyard from the battlefield, return it to your hand is the super important part here, right? So tons of upside, but a decent amount of downside. So with the reanimation package, it would only really fit if you had some decent reanimation as well, because if you put something important to the bin, the graveyard that you really want, it's gonna suck. However, the upside is you get to freely sacrifice your creatures and they go back to your hand to cast them, right? So this kind of goes infinite, which is what I'm alluding to. Is I feel like your deck does want some infinite combos if, what you were telling to me, that your playgroup is a bit stronger. So having a few at your disposal would be nice. So something that dies and creates a treasure, let's say a Shambling Ghast, this already pays for itself without your commander, and you have a sack outlet out. You get to create treasure tokens in two of them. So you either have infinite mana with Shambling Ghast and Enduring Renewal, or and your commander, or at least pays for itself, which is Shambling Ghast and Enduring Renewal. And again, with these drain effects and our sack outlets, going to be pretty powerful. And yeah, that goes for any of these cheap creatures, right? And especially Enduring Renewal, and now we're taking a look at the combo parts in some of these cheap creatures that create a spirit token when they die. Yeah, you have access to infinite drain, infinite mana with something like, let's take a look at Paula Ulamog, right? Paula Ulamog or Pitiless Plunder, probably one of the most two important cards of the deck in terms of trying to go off with some sort of combo here. Because Pitiless gives you any mana, Paula Ulamog gives you another 0/1, adding mana. So now you have access either to infinite death triggers or infinite mana with if you're doubling with Teysa Karlov, and then pretty much can close out games from there, which is cool to see. So Enduring Renewal is a suggestion, is a possibility, so up to you. And then Abdul Adrian is another one I'd suggest, and goes particularly good with Anime Dead, which I'll keep coming back to, but if Abdul Adrian's in our graveyard, so it gives us a ton of value in what we want to do. Send to the battlefield, exile any number of non-land permanents you control until Abdul Adrian leaves the battlefield. Create a 1/1 human white soldier creature token for each permanent exiled this way. So basically what happens with this guy is we can, I say tuck, exile our entire board, tuck them all under Abdul, have him die. So when he leaves the battlefield, it's going to trigger our commander if we sacrifice him and get double the amount of permanents. So we put, let's say, 10 permanents under Abdul, from our signets to our creatures, enchantments, artifacts, what have you, right? We put 10 under there. We sacrifice him with Teysa still out. We don't choose her. We're going to get 21/1 white creature tokens and get all our permanents back. So once our drain effects come back, with 21/1s, we can drain our opponents for a lot. But what I'm getting at with is, if we have them in our graveyard and animate dead in our hand, we can animate dead Abdul Adrian. And then when Abdul comes back with animate dead attached to it, right? We can choose to exile animate dead and, tuck it under Abdul Adrian. But since it's no longer attached to that creature, it will get sacrificed automatically. So built-in sacrifice outlet for Abdul Adrian. He'll die, those permanents will come back, one of them being animate dead, and once this enters the battlefield again, we can target our Abdul Adrian, resulting in an infinite loop of creating tokens, and then using those to drain our opponents, or however you want to win that way, right? So a suggestion for the deck. And of course, one of my favorite cards I will always suggest is Aeol of the Dawn Sky for 5. Ton of value built in on a stick, and especially if you're doubling it, I have a deck built around this alone, so doubling it is extremely powerful. The second effect, when it dies, you can put +1/+1 counters on all your spirits, so we like to see that. If you have a ton of tokens, good option. But the first option is look at top 7 cards, put any number of non-land permanent cards, total amount of 4 or less from among them on the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So if we're doubling this, we can get a lot of key creatures. Let's say our Pitiless Plunder or some other sack outlet, or if we need a drain effect, we can dig to the top 7 cards, grab some drain creatures. You grab, a Blood Artist and a Cruel Celebrant if you want, right? Very powerful. You can grab Carrying Feeder and a Woe Strider if you see those in the top 7, right? So you're usually going to hit something. We have a lot of permanents. So would, highly suggest finding room for this bad boy in the deck because I think it's a nice fit. Going down that route, Gary Merchant of Asphodel is it's a pretty decent card, and I think sort of a staple in a lot of Orzhov decks and permanent focus. We have a lot of black permanents. So if our devotion of black, let's say it's 10, on lower end, so enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, and where X is your devotion, you gain life equal to the life lost this way. So a nice way to keep you alive and potentially end games as well. And the thing to note about this funny guy is he's a 2/4. So we can sack him and then later on reanimate him with something like a Revel Arc, right? Which is already in the deck. Power 2 or less from your graveyard. We get to grab 2 creatures. So one of them could be Gary. Let's say Gary for short. That's what everyone calls him. And something else. And do this multiple times is when you really get the big value. And of course, with our... of course, it just fits the theme really nice. So this is most of the cards. You could take a look at them further if you want further explanation. But another one I forgot to touch on is Plumb the Forbidden for 2, right? We're creating a ton of tokens. When you cast a spell, you may sacrifice 1 or more creatures. When you do, copy the spell for each sacrificed creature. You draw a card and lose a life. So big sack outlet in a 1-shot, but we have like 10 spirits. All we have to do is pay 2 mana, sacrifice all those spirits. We're going to drain our opponents, hopefully, and then draw 10 cards. So, something to really take a look at. I'd highly recommend adding to the deck. And then going down here, now we're going to take a look at the zone of the, potential maybes. This is the more expensive cards. Take a look at some of them already. If you just want to amp up the power, you can add some of these. So... first off, on the Protecting Your Commander, I think Mithril Coat is a very powerful card. Because you can flash speed, cast this in response to someone trying to destroy your commander, and attach it to your commander for free that turn, and gives it indestructible. So another way to protect your commander, always looking for that. Esper Sentinel, a lot of people know about, but, going to be hopefully drawing cards, a nice early game drop. If they don't pay the mana, which not a lot of people do. Newer card that came out, Charismatic Conqueror. Hopefully this goes down a bit in general, but whenever artifact or creature enters the battlefield untapped, under opponent's control, they may tap that permanent. If they don't, you create a 1/1 white vampire creature token. So a lot of times people are going to be tapping their artifacts especially, and sometimes their creatures. Otherwise you can swing through at them, and you create a whole bunch of 1/1 sack fodder. So pretty cool card, would suggest. Dauthi Voidwalker is a very, very powerful card for 2 mana. Basically, gets rid of death triggers for your opponents, and then you can sacrifice it later on, and whatever card's put into the graveyard and is exiled with Dauthi Voidwalker, you can play, so extremely strong. I talked about Diabolical Intent, but for more drain effects, kind of dual-sided board wipe and drain effect, Meat Hook Massacre. So you can wipe the board if you have a lot of mana, and whenever creature you control dies, each one loses life, and creature and opponent control dies, you gain life. So nice drain and gain effect, very, very strong. Activated Sleeper should go in the other category, which I'll fix right now. This is a funny card here that has a lot of value, right? Enter the battlefield as a copy of any creature card in a graveyard that was put there from the battlefield this turn, except it's a Phyrexian. So really strong card, but I will harp on a little bit. A strong combo for this is if you have Cavalier of funny guy go? Cavalier Knight, which should be again in the other category, because it's a little bit cheaper. So you have Cavalier Knight in the graveyard for 5 mana. He's in the bin. Um, all this text, but when it dies, return target creature card, CMC 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Already really good with the commander on her own. And then with the active sleeper, so long as Cavalier Knight's in the graveyard, we cast activated sleeper. Becomes a copy of Cavalier Knight if we sacked it this turn, right? And activated sleeper becomes a Cavalier Knight, which we can double up on. And with a sack outlet out, I'm sorry, taking a look here. I'm not exactly sure how this works. When it dies, triggers. Assists here by sacrificing Cavalier Knight. When it dies, it triggers returning activated sleeper from your graveyard to the battlefield as copy of Cavalier Knight. When it enters the battlefield, it triggers choosing not to sacrifice a creature. Activate Visir's here, sacrifice this. And when it dies, it triggers returning. Oh, yes, okay. So with the ability of Cavalier Knight on activated sleeper, once we get rid of it, we can sacrifice it and have it trigger itself to have it target itself. Because it dies, you get this ability, returns creature card 3 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. We can choose itself since it has that ability, and it does see it, because activated sleeper will already be in the graveyard when this triggers, and basically gives you infinite recursion that turn. And yeah, we have drain, gain, scrying, infinite, all this stuff. So could be a powerful combo to think about adding to the deck. Going down from there, more sack outlets. Like I said, these are more expensive ones. Ashnod's Altar adds mana, so very powerful. And Phyrexian Altar adds color mana, so also very powerful. Just generic free sack outlets. And then this was a card I was going to compare to Archon of Justice, right? Dies, exile target permanent. A very similar effect for 3 is when it's put into a graveyard from play, destroy target artifact or enchantment. Doesn't get rid of creatures, but we have a ton of ways to do that. But for 3 mana, a lot of value, and we can double this. So something to take a look at. That's the direction you want to go. And then probably some of the most powerful effects to take a look at is Grave Pact. So for 4 mana, whenever a creature you control dies, each other player sacrifices a creature. We're going to be doubling this ability. And if we have sack outlets, we can do this on anyone's turn. So effects like that, and Dictative Erebos is a flash speed one. You'll be controlling the board state extremely well. Getting rid of problematic effects. So it's something to take a look at. And again, in the terms of just powerful cards, Smothering Tithe is a really good ramp option because people always draw cards. Not everybody likes to pay 2, and you create treasures because of that. So just some generic strong cards if you want to bump up the power level, depending on what you want to do. And another expensive card, but Plague Vermin kind of just wins games on itself. Sometimes because each other player may pay an amount of life. Repeat this process so no one pays life. Each player puts a 1/1 black rat creature token into play for each 1 life he or she paid. So again, we have like 20 life. We can dump 19 into this, play it extra risky. We create 19 1/1s with all their drain and gain effects, right? With like Cruel Celebrant, Blood Artist. When we sack them, we're actually doing more damage than we paid into it. So something to take a look at and consider. Yeah, this video is running a little long, and I thought this was going to happen. But I really want to give you a detailed explanation as to my thought process behind what I would add, what I wouldn't add, what areas are cool, what areas seem really good for the deck, and what areas maybe could be touched on. But overall, it's a very, very solid deck, very solid choice of cards here. It's going to do the game plan you really want, really good. so on and so forth. Um, yeah, and I'll try to go into a couple more combos if I can, but Yawgmoth Ran Physician, um, very powerful sack outlet for free, just costs life and draws you cards, so another card to take a look at. But yeah, uh, so there are lines in this deck that you could take a look at that give you some more infinites. If we take a look at, yeah, so another animate dead combo with Leon Relic Warder gives you infinite ETBs, infinite death triggers, and infinite leave the battle triggers, and infinite sack triggers. So it gives you all this kind of good stuff. Um, so again, this must be in the graveyard. Animate dead in hand is usually how these start. Uh, bring back Leon Relic Warder. It's my bad. Um, with Animate Dead, enters the battlefield. You target Animate Dead. Since it's no longer on the battlefield now, it gets sacrificed by itself. And you um, Animate Dead will come back, and this triggers all over again. So a nice 2-card combo to add to the deck. Again, if you have a drain effect, this wins the game usually, right? Um, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, those are just a couple. So I could dive into it more. But again, if you have like reassembling skeleton, right, and Pitiless Plunder and your commander and a sack outlet, you're already going even on paying for the mana cost to bring them back. And with a drain effect out, you have infinite drain. So that's pretty cool to see. Mm, yeah. So I'll leave you on that. You can take a look further. If you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments or reach out to me again. Um, but yeah, really sick deck. Hope. Yeah, I'm glad you're getting into the format. It's really fun. And it's always a good time. So yeah, really cool to see further creations. If you got more, let me know. And if anybody else has a deck tech they want me to take a look at, please let me know. Love to do it. So without further ado, this has been Momo versus MTG. Thanks for hanging out with me. And lastly, I gotta say, I do like the Secret Layer. This is one I did got. Tessa Karlov. Very cool. But anyways, leave a comment down below, like, subscribe, all the good stuff, and I'll see you when I see you. Take care.